mic, even though I hate them. Can you hear me now? That's really loud. Okay, so we're here tonight so you have an opportunity to meet our three candidates for the Board of Education. Mr. Michael Bailey, please correct me if I say it wrong, Ms. Sarah Grabowski, and no, I didn't do it right, did I? Grzgowski, that's hard. And Ms. Ava Sanchez, thank you for being here. So we have some pre-selected questions we've shared with the candidates that they'll answer tonight. Our moderator, Mr. Peter Bailey, Brody. Yes. Mr. Peter Brody, I know your name. I had a wonderful script somewhere on my phone, which is somewhere in this building. I don't know. So I apologize for that. So each candidate here will be given 2 minutes for a response to their questions. I'll be seated in the front giving a 30-second warning and a 1-minute warning and so on. We also have an introduction period of 2 minutes per candidate. The questions will rotate, so each candidate starts a question first. It'll go down the line and rotate back. After we are done with the question and answer session, there is refreshments in the other side of the auditorium, the Joe Benna Hall, and we welcome you to continue socializing and asking our candidates questions there. So if anything's not addressed, that is the time to do it. We ask all of our candidates to keep a calm voice, a respectful manner, in accordance with the DCS visitors policy. And without further ado, Mr. Peter Brody, who is a Johannesburg High School class of 1988 graduate. He is an active volunteer his entire life for the Johannesburg community. Most of us know him from Johannesburg Volunteer Ambulance Corps, where he's the chief. And he's a pillar of the community who's given countless hours of his time. So we're grateful that you will do this for our community and to have you all here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Ooh, hello, that's loud. Thank you, Yvonne. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Board of Education Meet the Candidate event. As Yvonne mentioned, I'm Peter Brody, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for each response. Please note that Yvonne is seated in the front row, or will be soon, and we'll provide you with notification when you have 30 seconds remaining and your time is up. We ask that each candidate respect the time limit so we can keep the evening moving along and ensure as many questions are answered as possible. Are there any questions from the candidates? Okay. We'll begin with the opening statements, 2 minutes each. Michael Bailey, your opening statement. A reminder to please use the microphone for the live stream.
All right, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know this probably isn't the most riveting of topics, but I appreciate the engagement and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Michael Bailey, and I've resided in Johannesburg for the last 15 years with my wife, Francesca, and my 3 boys, Santino, Michael, and Nico. I'm an IT director, and in my role, I give people what they need to be successful, I point them in the right direction, and then I let them do their job. I try to make fact-based decisions, and our board is, in the state of New York, it's unique. The board has 1 employee, and I suspect that approach will translate pretty well. I also served on the board of Cobleskill Campus Child Care Center as treasurer and successfully led that organization through COVID, and I stepped down in 2022. My involvement in school board elections has primarily been getting others elected. I'm proud of those candidates, some of which are on the board now, and our community, and I think our community is too. Our board has received an extraordinary education from some extraordinary teachers here. I'm running for this seat because I want this district to succeed. I want it to work for our students because we as a community owe it to them. And it's on us to teach them how to be good citizens and how to add value when they graduate. I want it to work for our community. Our entire community contributes enormous resources to make all this happen. And I want it to work for our staff. The people here are what make this school effective, and it's important to value them as professionals. I also want to ensure that this school operates in a manner that balances all 3 of those things in a thoughtful way. That thoughtfulness is the main reason I'm seeking this board seat and asking for the vote of all of you. Thank you.
Sarah Gwizdowski, your statement.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to meet the candidates tonight. It's really encouraging to see that our community comes together and engages in an important process like this. My name is Sarah Gwizdowski, and I am proud to be here tonight as a candidate for the Duanesburg Board of Education. I am currently a board member, and I have enjoyed serving for the last 3 years, and I am here tonight to seek your continued support and reelection. I've been a resident of Duanesburg for 34 years, and I'm a proud graduate of Duanesburg High. This district isn't just where I live, it's where I grew up. It's where my roots are, and it's where my husband, Mark, and I have chosen to raise our 3 beautiful children in the front row. My commitment to the community runs deep, and I'm running because I believe in leading with integrity, leading with transparency, and fiscal responsibility. I believe that every decision made by the board should be made with honesty, clarity, and the best of interests for our students, families, and taxpayers in mind. I want to ensure that our district remains strong, not just academically, but also financially, so we can provide the best possible education without placing any undue burden on our residents. Thank you again for being here tonight. I look forward to sharing more of my vision and hearing your questions this evening.
Avis Sanchez, your statement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, students and members of the community. I am honored to stand before you this evening as a candidate seeking re-election to the Duanesburg Board of Education for another 3-year term. I have been a resident of Duanesburg for a little over 20 years and have had the privilege of raising my family in the community. My husband and I have been married for nearly 2 decades. I feel really old right now saying that. And we are proud parents of 2 children. Our son is a graduate of Duanesburg Central School as of last year and is currently continuing his education at Hudson Valley Community College. Our daughter is presently attending Helderberg Christian School and is in 10th grade. Over the years of being on the school board, I've listened to many stories from fellow community members and board members who speak with pride about the Duanesburg Central School of the past, of strong school spirit, camaraderie, and a deep sense of belonging. I believe that Duanesburg Central School has the potential to once again become a place where every student feels safe, respected, and valued. A school where academic excellence is matched by strong character, mutual respect, and a sense of unity. If re-elected, I will remain committed to working alongside families, educators, and administrators to help foster a culture of respect and pride in our school community. I respectfully ask for your support and your vote. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you to all 3 candidates for your introductory statements. Now we'll move on to the questions, starting with Ms. Gwizdowski. What attributes and behaviors are essential for Board of Education members? How do you demonstrate those attributes?
Okay, I guess the first attribute that comes to mind is patience, because a lot of times we'll get fragments of stories or a little snippet of something or somebody griping, and it's just patience to, step back a minute. Okay, you talk, and then, let's take time to see the whole picture of maybe really what's going on here before we proceed. And I think that I exhibit that characteristic.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez? Same question.
Yes, can you say it again?
I'll repeat the question. Sorry, I missed that part in the quotes. We'll get it right by the time we get to question 7.
Okay.
What attributes and behaviors are essential for Board of Education members? How do you demonstrate those attributes?
I believe professionalism is one of the main ones. The board, it has to, reflect as one, even though, each member may not vote the same. We still have to remain professional, especially in front of the community. We don't want to show like a division of any sort. I believe we've really really showed that in the board for the last 3 years. I will continue to do so, show professionalism, and ask questions professionally.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, what attributes and behaviors are essential for Board of Education members? How do you demonstrate those attributes?
All right. I think that, for anyone who has come to a board meeting, and there haven't been very many attendees of those in the last couple of years, but for anyone who's gone to the board meeting, I think that's the front of the house in terms of where decisions are made, and it's the most visible thing to members of the community. But there's also the back of the house piece, which involves creating budgets and providing guidance to the one employee that the board has, which is the superintendent. I think that two characteristics are required to do well at both of those. The first is the ability to be a good listener at those meetings. People come to those meetings because they have an issue, and that's the way democracy is supposed to work. They're engaging and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So being able to listen to them and helping them direct their issue so that it can get addressed, I think is one piece. The back of the house piece, I think, leadership, I think is
Mr. Bailey, your
critically
time
important.
is up.
All right.
I'm a little nicer than Simon Cowell. I'm just following the red sign. I can't actually read it. I just know red is stop.
I will not make that mistake again. All right, so this is
My
what I was
apologies.
going to say is leadership. Being able to provide that one employee with goals and priorities, be able to hire that employee if you need to, provide them with goals and priorities, and also hold them accountable toward achieving those, like keeping forward momentum and going in that right direction. So I mentioned beforehand, my approach to my people has always been to give them what they need to do, give them the tools they need to do their job, and then let them do it. I think that translates well here.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Ms. Sanchez. What are 3 priorities you wish to address or accomplish during your time on the Board of Education?
Oh, there's so many. The budget is extremely high. It's at 20, well, we're trying to get get a vote for over $20 million. I would like to see reduced spending. Ooh, reduced spending. I would like to see, I think I would like to see more students involved with activities. I know we had a pretty good number this year. I think it was around 160 to 190, I think. But I wasn't sure if that's the same students in each sport, because we do see a lot of the same students doing pretty much every activity. But I think I would like to see more of that. And you said 3, so third one. Oh my goodness. I think I'd like to see more communication maybe between parents and teachers. As board members, we hear a lot. We don't respond, but we hear a lot of things that go on in the school, and they feel like there's a lack of communication. So I would like to see that. And what was the last part of that question after the 3?
That was it. What
Okay.
three priorities you wish to address or accomplish during your time on the Board of Education?
Okay. Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, what are 3 priorities you wish to address or accomplish during your time on the Board of Education?
All right. Anyone who's ever participated in the budget process, at least I've noticed from watching it, the state can be somewhat, shall I say, unpredictable. They're not really good at hitting budget deadlines, and they got a very long track record of doing that. That puts our district in a pretty precarious spot because we have to prepare a budget that relies heavily on state funding, and we don't exactly know what that funding is going to be. So I think in terms of priorities, I think one should be to prepare as much as possible and to not make optimistic assumptions about what the state may or may not do. The second piece would be to rigorously challenge the items in the budget that we have spent in the past, and not necessarily assume that just because we did it last year, we would do it again this year. I also understand the fact that most of that is not discretionary spending, but rigorous challenging of what we've done in the past, and to make sure that we're squeezing every dollar out of the value of squeezing the most value out of every dollar we spend. The last piece is to provide guidance and support to our administration. They're the ones that are on the ground actually making this happen, and providing clear goals and holding them accountable to those goals and providing the support they need to be successful, I think, are key.
Thank you. Ms. Gwizdowski, what are 3 priorities you wish to address or accomplish during your time on the Board of Education?
Okay, 3 priorities. I guess we'll start with the hot ticket item, the budget. I know we all have opinions, and it's a really difficult thing because some people feel a little bit more compelled for certain budget line items than others, but I think, again, having those hard conversations with the budget are really necessary, and just being respectful, whether or not you agree with that person's point of view, and you might really value the thing they're suggesting about cutting, but hear them out the whole way, the whole thought process. So, just continuing to have those tough financial conversations is probably, I would say, one of my very top priorities. And being continually somebody that's there for clear communication between the administration and the teachers, the board, the students. It does seem like with all the different modes of communication that we have, that things are less clear than ever. And I'm not saying I have the best answer for that, and I think that some things have been put into play to work towards that, but I would like to continue to see that be a priority. And the third thing, I just really would like to see the community, come together a little bit more as like a holistic approach, together, and come alongside the school, and not that we're in competition, but to just kind of develop those relationships a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, the next question starts with you. What is the best way to address differences of opinion within the board or between the board and school administration?
I think the reason that you have a board is because you don't want any one person to make that decision. You want to reduce the risk of making the wrong decision by bringing more minds to the table so that they can exchange ideas. I think that's really important. I also think a critical tool that I use is fact-based decision making. I find that if you have enough facts, that it kind of democratizes the decision-making process, and the right thing to do becomes a lot less emotional and a lot clearer. It doesn't always work that way, and you don't always have all the facts when you do it, but that's something that I endeavor to try to adhere to, and it's served me well in the past.
Thank you. Ms. Gwizdowski, what is the best way to address differences of opinion within the board or between the board and school administration?
Okay. I think the best way to address any of these discrepancies or miscommunications would be to find out what the situation is. It's not about you, me, your opinion, my opinion, but what is the situation that we're talking about? What exactly is the meat of this? And get to that, and then we can take some fact-based assessments of what is going on here and make it just about the situation and focus directly on that. And I think that takes away some of the emotions and some of the opinions in it when we just focus on the situation.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez, what is the best way to address differences of opinion within the board or between the board and school administration?
I think everybody on the board needs to be calm, cool, and collected. Um, I, I know for myself, I try to hear out everybody that's on the board. Um, I believe in active listening, so I believe that, each person should be heard. I don't think, I can honestly say, I don't think we've ever really talked over each other. We give each other, their turn. But I feel on my end, it's more about professionalism in order, to hear everybody out and then to say my piece calmly, and not to be emotional. As I know at times I may have been emotional about, certain things, but you have to keep that calm. You have to keep that calm presence.
Thank you. Next question starts with Ms. Gwistowski. Schools across the country are facing uncertain financial times. How would you approach the challenges of balancing competing demands and limited resources when making budgetary decisions?
The numbers speak. I would really just get to the bottom of the numbers first and make sure we have everything factual, and then we can build our decision making together from there. But I think when you're talking about hard budget cuts, budgets come down to numbers, and that's really where I would start this process and conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez, schools across the country are facing uncertain financial times. How would you approach the challenges of balancing competing demands and limited resources when making budgetary decisions?
I do feel like we could reduce some of our spending, but I am not a fan of cutting extracurriculars for students. I feel that that's very important for students. And it actually is in the numbers. Before every board meeting, I go line by line on the financials. Everybody's probably tired of hearing my questions about what's this and what's that. But there's certain things where I kind of think to myself, do we need to cut in that area? So I do think it does need to be reduced quite a bit. Like I said, we're requesting to spend over $20 million, and that is quite a bit of money. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. What would we do? We would have to cut some of our budget down.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, schools across the country are facing uncertain financial times. How would you approach the challenges of balancing competing demands and limited resources when making budgetary decisions?
You just mentioned the word limited resources. The last time I heard that word, and I was staring at lights like this, I was a senior in high school, and I was the student representative to the Board of Education at Shelmont. At the time, our district was having a union dispute, and there was a work to rule. Teachers are limited in what they can do in that situation, and it kind of what happens. And as a student, I was watching all that and thinking to myself, this is a really tough situation. We're getting budgets shot down 2, 3, 4 times. And as a student looking at that, I was like, this is something I need to learn more about. I checked a book out of the library on school finance and read it. And at the time, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a very precarious situation. You got a whole district full of residents that have to foot the bill for this stuff. And, we're spending money on our football team is like the world's most expensive team money can finance, right? Our district's not unfamiliar with that as well. But what I learned was that we're in the business of public education. It's about how much value you can deliver per dollar, and you need to find a way to model that in a way that makes sense. Like, if you can spend $1 and you can benefit 10 students, as opposed to spending $1 and benefiting 6, That's one way to do it. Doesn't work in all situations, but coming up with a model that works and can allow you to make those decisions in a fact-based way, I think is critically important. Avis mentioned extracurriculars. That's a very emotional one, right? Like, it's an expensive thing. It's very emotional, and it doesn't, like, sometimes, it can't benefit as many, and it's more expensive. That's one example of way you can do that, but you still need to be cognizant of how that affects everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Next question starts with Ms. Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez, what do you believe our school district has been successful in accomplishing, and to what do you attribute this success?
Boy, I really need 2 minutes to think about it. I do believe, since we've hired, the new, oh my goodness, the titles, the special ed teacher or the special ed director, I feel like that has gotten a lot better, and it has increased quite a bit. The spending for IEP and so forth. And what was the rest of that question? I'm sorry.
Sure, I'll repeat the whole question for you.
Okay.
What do you believe our school district has been successful in accomplishing? And the second part, to what do you attribute this success?
Oh, I think it was the selection of Ms. Schneibel. She's exceptional. Finding somebody who's experienced in that area and everything. I think us all agreeing to hire her on board is a big deal for the IB, for the special ed department. So,
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, what do you believe our school district has been successful in accomplishing, and to what do you attribute this success?
I mentioned earlier my children received are receiving an extraordinary education here. I think that's a testament to extraordinary teachers that truly care about their craft. And I compare that against my school. When I went to Chalmont, our graduating class was probably 3 times what it is here. And we didn't have half the opportunities that we did. We didn't have AP classes like that are offered here. We didn't have robotics club. We didn't have things like that. Like, this district accomplishes an inordinate amount with the resources available to it. Like, it's truly impressive. I think that cultivating that and providing the resources to continue to do that, still being diligent about squeezing the most out of every dollar, but doing that, I think, is absolutely key. The example I mentioned earlier about football, you're up here and you say something, and the minute it left my lips, it didn't sound like what I was trying to say. I played football when I was a kid. My middle son plays it. That isn't an opportunity that's here, and my middle son attends Christian Brothers Academy. For the most part, it's for that. But like, that football analogy, that football example was important. Like, that's something that isn't here. At the time, I'm sure that was an extraordinary or an excruciating decision to go make. And I don't know what the future holds for that, but it's important to be diligent about trying to squeeze the most out of all the resources that we have, because we're in the business of public education. We owe it to our students to give them what they need. And it's not just academics, it's not just extracurriculars, it's not just clubs, it's all of it. The total tonnage of all that together is what gives these students what they need to go succeed in the world after they walk out the door. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gwizdowski, what do you believe our school district has been successful in accomplishing, and to what do you attribute this success?
I think DCS has been successful in really embodying what a smaller school district means. And that means deep relationships and closeness. And that comes out, and when it comes, I'll reflect back to when I was a student here. I have some teachers to this day I still talk to, sit on the board with one of them, and I feel like that is something that, the district just happens to be in a smaller community, but it has really embodied that. And it has flown through the culture of the school and the community that's kind of kept us close even 20, 30, 40 years after graduation. People graduate, go to college, but then move back here to raise their kids for a reason. And so I would attribute it to that closeness and respect that people have for each other.
Thank you. Next question starts with Mr. Bailey. You're stuck in the center and handing it back and forth. Mr. Bailey, what are the most pressing challenges facing our school district? What do you see as a board's role in addressing those challenges?
I think one of the things we struggle with is scale. So we're a relatively small district in the area, and there are things that are hard to do at our scale. Football is a good example of one of those. I mentioned that earlier. It's not impossible to do, but it is harder to do than it would be at a district with, say, 160 students per class. In order to make that work, in order to overcome those challenges of scale, requires creative thinking and thinking outside of the box. I sit in the chair and I watch, every slide Rivenberg shows up here at budget time, every single one of those pieces every single one of those lines are pieces of a puzzle that are all designed to accommodate that scale. And, one of the ways to do that, there's tools in the box to go do that. There's shared services through things like BOCES. There's, creative ways of using staff and using facilities in order to go do that. But the board doesn't really have, that's mostly the purview of the administration to go do that stuff. But, when it comes to designing budgets and coming up with those ideas, like the out-of-the-box thinking is critically important. I think even more so than it is in a larger district. So I think that's something that we struggle with, and we have to be relentless about constantly trying to find ways to go deal with that, and do it in a way that accommodates the needs of students and is respectful toward the community that is funding it.
Thank you. Ms. Gwizdowski, what are the most pressing challenges facing our school district? What do you see as a board's role in addressing those challenges?
I would say the most pressing one is resources and the fiscal situation that we're in right now. The best way to really overcome that is to have hard conversations. We're gonna have to start with something factual, number-wise. And yes, in all those conversations, some emotions are gonna come into it, but again, if we keep focused about what the topic is, what is the hard decision we have to make, not that anybody wants to make it. I believe that that's unfortunately one of the ones that we're just faced to have right now. And I pride myself in out-of-the-box thinking. I really like to think about things creatively, and so I think that I bring that skill to the table that is going to help us get through these next few years that are probably going to be a little bit more challenging.
Ms. Sanchez, what are the most pressing challenges facing our school district, and what do you see as the board's role in addressing those challenges?
I think Sarah hit it right on the head. It is the budget. The budget is probably going to be the most trying. Everything keeps increasing. Supplies. Construction keeps increasing. We just, recently had to purchase a $10,000 refrigerator because the other one broke, for the cafeteria, and we have to have a refrigerator. And the industrial size things cost more. But we, in order to fix that, we would have to make cuts somewhere, and we would have to professionally discuss making cuts and where to cut. And like I said, I am not a fan of cutting extracurriculars, but if there is not that much, activity in those, extracurricular activities, then, that might be a tough decision that we have to make together as a board, as one board.
Thank you. And our last question starts with Ms. Gwizdowski. Ms. Gwizdowski, how can the Board of Education ensure that all students have access to high-quality education, regardless of background or abilities?
I think that we can ensure that just by simply giving each child based on their needs what they need, and equally come to the table. And if it's a child that needs a little bit more help in reading, I know we have programs set up for that. So we lean into the systems that we have established, and if we find that there's something problematic along the way, the board should bring that problem to the table and we would discuss it together and come up with a solution of how things are not working at that point in time. But as of right now, I think a lot of systems are in place for that, and as those issues arise, we'll have those conversations and deal with them together.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez, how can the Board of Education ensure that all students have access to high-quality education, regardless of background or abilities?
I think we already do that. We already provide AP classes. We actually reduced the grade for AP classes, which is exciting because I know there's some students who would like to be in an advanced class. I believe, like I said previously, we've improved IEP to assist students, who need that extra assistance. And special ed in general, we've improved. And I'm sorry, say the last part again.
Sure, I'll reread the whole question.
Okay.
How can the Board of Education ensure that all students have access to high-quality education, regardless of background or abilities?
Okay. Yeah. So I think I answered the question, but yeah, I think we already have those in place. I would like to see those areas continue on and improve also.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, how can the Board of Education ensure that all students have access to high-quality education, regardless of background or abilities?
I think the best way they can do that is by providing good support and guidance to our administration and by being thoughtful in proposing budgets for vote for the community that are going to pass. I think in order to do that, it not only involves being thoughtful about crafting the budget, but also involving the community and get them engaged so that when you ask them to go vote for a budget, like they understand what went into it. I think that selling that is something that every district has to deal with, but it can make the difference between, a community that just thinks you're out there spending a bunch of money as opposed to thinking that you were thoughtful about crafting that. You go to a store and something costs a lot of money, it's very different than here's the price tag as opposed to here's what we did to go reduce the price as much as possible. Here's what we're doing to reduce the price for you as much as we could. That type of salesmanship, can make the difference about whether a budget passes or not. This district, we don't, the discretionary amount that districts vote on of the budget is tiny compared to the overall pie. That's always been the case in New York State. But that other piece that you vote on is critically important, makes a big difference in whether or not you can actually execute on the goals that you want to, as opposed to, or you're working with a contingency budget with enough to keep the lights on, and that's about it. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Now, finally, you've completed your 7 questions. Congratulations. Now, each of you will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Ms. Sanchez, we'll begin with you.
Thank you again for taking the time out of your evening to meet with us. I hope the answers that I provided tonight have helped to offer clarity as you consider your vote. If I am reelected, I will continue to prioritize fiscal responsibility for our school. I will keep asking the hard questions and remain committed to fulfilling my responsibilities with professionalism and integrity. Thank you again for your time, your thoughtful questions, and your engagement. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, your closing statement.
The ballot is unique this year because there's 3 candidates running for 2 seats. When you go to the polls, I encourage you to not only consider why I'm running for this seat, but also what distinguishes me from my opponents. Prior to being elected to their current term, my opponents ran on the idea that something bad was going on in our school. Both campaigned on a need for change, and I respect that. It's what elections are all about. But once elected, my opponents tried to enact that change, both voting against the board's own budget proposal in the first year. Since then, my opponent, Ms. Gwizdowski, has continued to vote against budget proposals every year for the last 3 years. She also voted not to renew the BOCES contract, and it was this vote that made me want to run for this term. It's when I decided. If she had been successful in this effort, sourcing those services would have been extraordinarily expensive for our taxpayers and would have deprived students of access to career technical education like the building trades, carpentry, plumbing, and welding. While I do not doubt that she has students' best intentions in mind, and I mean that, I'm concerned that she does not understand the impact that that specific vote could have had. Everyone is familiar with budget pressure at the federal level. That pressure is already being exerted on states, and the pressure New York will exert on our community is a mathematical certainty. I think everyone up here understands that. Dealing with that will require a thoughtful approach, an open mind, a willingness to do my homework, and the wherewithal to do what's required. That's why I'm asking for the vote of everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Ms. Gwizdowski, your closing statement.
Thank you all for being here tonight and showing how much you really care about our school district. Running for the Board of Education isn't something that I take lightly. It's a responsibility that I am pursuing because I genuinely care about the community. Because I live it, I've learned from it, and I want to give back to it in a meaningful way. I want to address Mr. Bailey's comment about how I have voted, and yes, those are accurate votes that I have made. I come at it from a standpoint of a little bit more fiscal responsibility is needed, and that is what I see able to happen, and that's I stand behind my vote, and I looked very carefully at each of those items, and a vote for no isn't necessarily a vote that you don't support the thing, you just don't support the budget that's being presented. So I want you to just think about the differentiation between the two of those things when you hear a no vote. Beyond that, I believe in thoughtful leadership, leadership that listens, leadership that asks questions, and leadership that does hard work behind the scenes. I am committed to transparency, making fiscally sound decisions, and keeping the best interest of our students at the center of our conversations. I'm grateful for the opportunity to earn your trust and hopefully your vote on May 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gwizdowski. And thank you to all 3 of you for your thoughtful participation this evening. On behalf of the DCPTA and the Duanesburg community as a whole, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us here this evening to learn about our Board of Education candidates. Let's give them a round of applause. Reminder that the election, as Ms. Gwizdowski said, is next Tuesday, and that election is being held at the elementary school from 1 to 9. I'm watching the superintendent's head bob up and down, so that's a giveaway. And to be cautious when driving through the village of Delancey that evening, as we'll be celebrating Memorial Day with the Community Memorial Day Parade that evening. I get to have a microphone in front of my face again that night. But it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I thank President Peterson for reaching out and engaging me in this opportunity. And I encourage everyone to stay for refreshments and to engage in conversation with our 3 candidates. And I wish the 3 of you the best of luck, and thank you for your commitment to our community. Have a good evening.